Hello there, I'm Callum and welcome to the EU in Review, where I review the Star Wars Expanded Universe as I experience it. And of course, now I have a bit different look. So, I've got this interesting different way of setting this up with an angle there and an angle there. Haha. But anyway, let me get to it. With finishing off my thoughts on the Ewoks comics. This is issues 11 to 14. Written by David Manick and illustrated by Warren Creamer and released in 1987. So I think overall very similar thoughts to what I have originally in my other reviews. So the overall plot is just really good fun, I think. That's the best way to describe it. Now, it may not be as easy to bear as an adult because of how childish it is, but it is good fun, and they just had fun with telling stories of the Ewoks in this case. The set ideas that they do with the Ewoks and the adventures they go on is actually really good, and I really do enjoy them, which is actually a good part of it, because there's sometimes they could be really childish and not really have any interesting ideas in them, but I do think overall that the Ewoks comics have got good ideas that they implement inside of them. Now, that being said, it is childish, so the dialogue is a bit childish. The writing style of the dialogue, like the pacing, it's comic book pacing, which I find to be a bit more fast paced, but I'm getting more used to it as I read more comics and manga. And that's just the way the format is, I think, compared to me going normally a novel person. And so this feels like it's going very quickly compared to what I would normally have it as. But yes. The visuals, I do like the art, although it's not as good as some of the later art that is more realistic, or even the original Marvel run, because I think that they really modeled it after the TV show, and so they could have had a lot of improvement with that to be able to make it more realistic. Although, that being said, model it after the Ewoks cartoon, it's similar, so it actually makes sense that they're actually the same sort of art. And while it's not as good as I think the art in the main Marvel run actually got, it is still fairly good. And the continuity, it comes to the point where I'm not sure how the continuity lines up exactly. And it'll be a talk a bit more for the Droids comics, since someone commented on my reviews of the Droids comics with some information on the continuity there. Because even the little retcon that they did for that, I think, that's quite... anyway, I think this is actually set before Return of the Jedi, because that would make the most sense to me. And not really afterwards, because that's the way that it makes sense, because even before the Empire invaded, they had some pirates and whatever land on there. Of course, you would have that, especially from like the Star Wars: The Old Republic with Treek. You have some way of getting a spacefaring vessel from Treek, which would have been visitors to Endor, and so you would have some pirates and whatever coming and doing what they want, but not the Empire, notably in this series. So I think that this was before the Empire came and started building the Death Star too. Anyway, onto the spoilers, which will be my thoughts as I read it, which I have the handy notes here for it, because now I can't look at the screen at the same time as going through my notes. So here we go. Issue 11 is titled The Incredible Shrinking Princess. And there's a little species of beetle people called the Fleabox in this. They plant a damsel flower, which makes Nisa shrink, and they capture her. And you're like, well, they must be bad guys, right? Well, that comes into a bit of a twist where they actually just want to have a voice. So they're literally the little people wanting a voice. Which is kind of like, yeah, okay, I get what you're going for there. Each of them has to have a moral. There's a spinning top instead of a crystal ball that Log Ray uses to find out where she is, which is interesting. And Wicked and T-Boat, of course, get shrunk to fit in. But at least it's by Log Ray and they don't just reuse the flower. which apparently there's growing powder too. So you gotta wonder, why is everything happening on Endor? Like, they have to have a counter for everything, they have to fight the Ewoks, they have the Mount Sorrow, they have the cave, and I think the cave might be one I'll mention in this review, but like, man, it's crazy how much stuff is actually on Endor. I guess that's how it goes. And it's interesting, there's just a actual beetle, an actual bigger beetle than the flea bogs are, because they're like little beetles. And then it's the classic, you get shrunk and there's a normally small animal that will attack you, and yeah, it would normally not be a threat, that sort of thing. Part 2 of that is the Tunnel of Terror. And I thought the Ralug's, if I'm pronouncing that right, Ralug's facial expressions are funny in the comic. And it's also basically a scorpion that shoots webs out of its tail, which is interesting. It said web has to be held with its claws, apparently. It can't just shoot a web and it sticks. No. This has to go shoot the web, and now I have to hold it with my claws to actually be able to use it and fiddle with it and do things with it. So, however that works. It's interesting how the flea bogs, I thought, aren't really bad, but they just shrunk her to be heard. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think it's an interesting, different way of doing it. Because normally you might think, oh yeah, they're going to be the bad guys and capture her and then Wicked, and Tivo will have to save them, and that's how it goes. But no, this is a little bit different with just being able to say, look, the little people want a voice. And I guess that is the moral of this story as well, is wanting the little people to have a voice. And it's interesting how they had the damsel flower shrink her, but then apparently it just continually keeps shrinking her. So I noted that by the end of this part 2, Nisa is small enough to sit on Wicket's shoulder. The next part is A Little Princess Goes a Long Way. I thought, why doesn't the Ralug grow any bigger than he reached from the growing powder? And I thought it was an interesting way, like the growing powder is supposed to grow you back, right? How do they stop growing? Like, do they just grow back to normal size, or is it actually a thing where they will keep growing and growing until they have something to stop them? And at this point I was going, well, okay, I guess it's just returning to normal size. Of course, I have to fit it all in one issue of a comic as well, so they don't want to make it too complicated. And it ends the stories with the Ewoks being returned to full size by the growing powder, which I guess is the main thing here, is like the moral of the story, listen to the little people, and that's how that goes. Now, issue 12 is titled The Thorn Monster, which I thought this was an actually interesting one, I thought. This sets up with the premise of Logray's actually going on a holiday, and he leaves his stuff in the care of Wicket and Nisa. And Morag appears again, because of course, Morag, the evil witch, which she didn't kill in the last time she appeared. And so she comes back. Of course, it's a cartoon and it's a kid's comic, so they're not gonna be killing the enemy, are they? Oh no, that would be making too much sense. Haha. I thought she would have died from when she was defeated before, but oh well. I find it interesting how when Morag casts her spell, Logray's surroundings turn to a desert look, rather than the lush green that it showed before. And I think this is the thing with the art, that it's not as consistent, where in some panels it's lush green, and then it's, when she casts her spell, it's a barren desert look around him. And then it goes back to lush green straight after. It's like, what's happening to the environment? Well, that's how it goes, I guess. And Morag has some toad-looking demons in this one, which I thought was interesting. Part 2 of this is called The Brown Forest of Endor. And I thought maybe the Thorn Monster isn't as accurate, as it's a spell enhancing a plant to suck moisture out of the surroundings, which is actually a pretty cool idea. I like this idea, that there's a creature that actually sucks all of the moisture out of the area. And there are some glorious puns. You gotta love the puns and the jokes there. And then they return to Logray, and Logray's stuck because Morag's spell to trap him made the pool that he was in some sticky liquid that he couldn't get out of. And so he trusts his staff to Wicket. Of course, Wicket, the ever hero. And Wicket somehow seems quite proficient with it. And it seems almost like, well, we know that Logray was teaching him some things before and then he gave up on it, so maybe that's a follow-on from that he knows how to use a staff relatively well. And apparently there was just the way he uses it is a little trick that Logray showed him one time after running an errand for him. And for some reason, Morag, the evil witch, the big bad, keeps Chief Chirper alive. I'm like, you're going after the Ewoks. Why are you keeping them alive? It's like, come on, kill them if you're the bad guy. Or at least threaten to kill them. And instead of just going, ha ha ha, I have you now. Let's have my spell to destroy the whole environment and everything around you. But let's not actually kill the Ewoks, because they won't stop me. Ha! Of course they'll stop you. Part 3 is The Wrath of Morag. And she makes the vines into a giant monster, which then you go, well, okay, that's the thorn monster, I guess. And that makes sense. And so it's really interesting is this thorn monster and how it can move, like it digs up its roots and then just keeps sucking water out of the ground as it moves. And I thought, what an idiot, because Wicket leaves the staff behind as they run. I'm like, come on dude, the staff is magic. It's a wonder Morag didn't pick that up, actually. Oh. I thought the monster absorbs too much water and is thick. I'm like, damn, he's thick. Anyway. And then he explodes. So, yeah. They kill him by making him suck up too much water by going to the lake. Moral of the story, not to put too much water on your plants. It's a really complicated moral. Don't worry if you get lost in it. Too much water will kill the plants, so you don't water them too much. And I thought it was funny that Logray looks like he's wearing a nappy when he gets out. And then randomly, he has his clothes back on in the next panel that he's in, so they don't even show that they don't even mention that he's like, oh, I better get dressed. He's just like, one moment I look like I'm in a nappy, the next I'm dressed. And then basically that's the end of it, is like they defeat the Thorn monster and life goes back to hippity hoppity normal with the Ewoks. Issue 12 is called The Black Cavern, and yes, this is the cave that I mentioned earlier. There's a cave with, the highlight of this, basically I'll mention it now, is there's a cave with that's on a cliff face, but then there's a face on the cliff face that when its mouth is open leads to the Dark Cavern. I'm like, people complain about Mount Sorrow, they don't mention the Dark Cavern, they don't mention other stuff. It's like, it's all part of the Ewoks comics and the whole make it good for kids, but also just put some weird and wacky stuff in there that people can just laugh at, which I think is nice that they actually do that. There's another special item called the Sun Crystal, which Wicket will take after he succeeds at the Test of Courage, which is an obstacle course. And I thought, after everything that you've done, fighting evil monsters, going in and getting things even from the first issue, getting the stuff from the ogre, and I think that was the first issue, one of the earlier issues anyway, and all of this stuff that you've done, now you're taking a test of courage. I'm like, it's almost should be the first issue chronologically, because he's done everything that he does afterwards, and he should already be going, yes, that is a test of courage, rather than just going through, oh, you climb up a tree, tie a vine, and then swing, and then if you succeed at swinging, that's your test of courage done. I'm like, yeah, he's already proven his courage. Apparently, he's earning a badge for his Belt of Honor, which is very much like Scouts. I thought it was funny how they introduced the King's son, Boogat, It's the Jewlock King's son. And thinking makes the Jewlock's head hurt too much. So I thought that was funny. And Wicket says that he's never been so nervous in his life, which is just swinging from a tree to attempt the test. And this is where I went, everything you've done before, and just swinging from a tree on a vine makes you nervous. I'm like, come on, dude. You've done all this stuff, and you're nervous from swinging from a tree? The kid, Jewlock, Boogut, breaks Wicket's vine, or slices or whatever, and everyone blames Wicket for whatever reason, saying that he's not even worth warriorhood because his vine broke. It definitely seems like it's before other events. Like, this should be the first issue chronologically. Because otherwise it's like, well, he's proven himself so many times. I'm repeating myself now, but hey, that's what I think. Also, Boogut is told he ruined things by his father because his father was trying to think of some other plan, and then he goes and does that and he's like, oh, you messed it up, you stupid kid. So, yeah. Anyway, part 2 of this is called Risky Business. It is stated that the crystal has been the symbol of Ewok courage for 100 years. And it says the Ewok tribe used to be a warring one, and then they turned to peaceful ways, so I thought that was also interesting. And yes, the entrance to the Black Cavern, because they go, oh no, the sun crystal's destroyed. Where can we get one? Oh, this Black Cavern. And so Wicket hears about that and goes, I'm gonna improve myself. I'm gonna go into the Black Cavern and get a sun crystal. And the Black Cavern has the face in the side of the cliff. A literal cliff face. Yeah. It's a kid's comic. And part 3 is Trapped in the Black Cavern. And I thought it was funny that as soon as King Gornish hears his sons with the Ewok in the Dark Cavern, so yes, Boogut joined Wicket when they went into the Dark Cavern because he was like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna go get the sun crystal for my dad. Because destroying, yeah, when Wicket failed the test of courage because the vine got cut, it destroyed the sun crystal. That's why he's going to get a new one. Forgot to mention that. And then that's why Boogut was called a failure and he ruined everything by his father. Because he wanted the sun crystal for himself. And so both are trying to prove themselves, which I thought was an interesting way of doing it, and having them sort of join forces in the end. The Guardian of the Sun Crystal reminds me of a monster from Monsters Inc., which I thought was pretty funny. They did really well in the art in places where you can really see the frustration on Wicket's face. Because he goes, oh sheesh, when he has to save Boogut. And it ends with Wicket saving Boogut. And then the aftermath is a bit funny with Gornish saying he's a disgrace to the Jewlocks by letting the Ewoks save him. Well, that was a funny little thing. They've got little funny things in the Ewok comics like that. Then we have issue 14, which is the final Ewoks comic. And is titled King for a Day. And they're picking a leader while Chief Chopper is away by pulling a name out of a basket. Seems legit. That'll totally work, right? Wait, nudge, nudge. You know what I mean. Yeah, it's a bad idea, because they named Tebow the leader, the irresponsible one, and the one that always seems to do more damage when he tries to help people. And everyone's just, the whole crowd is just like, yeah, okay. And Chief Chirper, I knew, would regret the words, what can go wrong in one day? He jinxed himself, right? And yeah, he sets off a chain of events like an idiot, and then runs away when people chase him. So it doesn't help anything. Anyway, part 2 is The Great Escape. And there's a probe that finds the village, and then a Captain Zornak has stones of obedience that make them obey commands from whoever gives the stones to them. So like, say someone put the stone on me, I would have to obey all of their commands. I'm like, that's actually a fairly cool idea, even though it doesn't really make sense as far as Star Wars lore at the time. I'm going, this is a bit more childish. That's why I've had taking longer to read them as well. But some of these things is like, yeah, okay. It's a story. It's like a folk tale told to children to teach them lessons later on. And I don't know how it works. They just say what happens, and it works. Of course, Tebow finds out about it after he ran off, and then he has to do something about it. So the thing of this story is like he has to step up to the responsibility and save all of the people, all the Ewoks, I should say. And Tebow gets spotted, and they send another Ewok after him, which he looks like Wicket, and it is Wicket. And you can guess what's gonna happen with that. And then part 3 is the end of the king. And yeah, Wicket tries to shoot Tebow because he's actually given a gun by the pirates for whatever reason. And then Tebow actually manages to knock him out and then take the stone off him and then work out a thing there. So it's actually a pretty clever plan that he puts together, because they manage to pretend long enough after Tebow knocks him out and uses a stone on Wicket to get a stone on the captain so that he obeys their commands. So how that worked was, Tebow took the stone off, and then he put the stone back on Wicket so that Wicket would obey Tebow's commands, and then they trick the captain by walking right in with Wicket going, "I captured him," and then BAM! Stone on the captain. Done. And that's how they save everyone. They get the stone on the captain and then release the Ewoks. Done. Easy. You would think. Anyway. Logray at the end makes a joke that Chirper may have been out of a job if they left for longer at the end of the... I'm like... Tebow wouldn't be a great leader. Just saving people is different to actually leading them in the normal village context as well, where it was failing the whole time. So I'm like, yeah, you would have regretted if you did that. He's not going to be out of a job from Tebow. And anyway, Nisa's going to be the next chief. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the Ewoks comics. Issues 11 to 14, of course, but overall as well, the Ewoks comics are fairly childish. I think they're an interesting read, but I did have a little bit of trouble getting through them and being motivated to actually read them because they were so childish. Yeah. Read them yourself, you can form your opinion, but they're not necessary, and they even seem to not really be part of the main continuity, which is why I'm going, hey, they're like folklore, but it's like escanon, so the events happened in some way, shape or form, but the details told in them aren't quite accurate, like the talking cliff face and the Mount Sorrow and all the other wacky things like the rockers that are the talking little rocks. It's like, yeah, like that would actually happen in Star Wars. There's some wacky stuff, but not quite that out there, and it is like the Ewoks and the droids cartoon, so you have to allow for that too. Anyway, what did you think of these? I'm interested in people's thoughts. If you've read the Ewoks comics, or if you're interested in reading them, then let me know. And if you enjoyed hearing my thoughts, then don't forget to like and subscribe, comment what you think, and yeah, that'll help me out a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Uru!